This is film to table, is what I think I decided to call it.
Like right now.
Right. That's what I'm going to call it right now. This is, I think I'm going to consider this a spin-off of, or a side version of the Top Shelf podcast. But I think we talked about on a card ride that this is our version of, what was it called? Dinner and a Movie? They used to do on TBS.
Which I love that show.
I know.
And it's like the only thing that somehow has never made a comeback, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I liked the two actors that they had for that. They were like comedians.
I don't honestly remember
it was.
It
was one girl that she was like, she kind of looks like the insurance girl. And then the guy.
Which Flo or the other insurance?
Flo, I think.
Okay.
It looks like her, but it's not her. And then the guy is like generic comedian guy, but he had that face of like...
Yeah. I just like the banter because it was, I don't know, it was kind of corny, but it was also kind of fun. So it was fine to leave your kids to watch it.
Well, I think it was especially for introverts.
Right.
Like, you say kids, but I was like an adult. And
I was pretty grown.
super into it because I was like, this is a good thing to watch while I stay in. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, this is the reason why this is film to table instead of farm to table. Is because we're going to talk about a movie that we just saw recently, or every now and then I think we're going to just talk about movies that we've seen or that maybe we've watched more recently. And then the idea is we would want to pair it with a food. I already have something in my mind of what I want to do for this, and then you can rip off of that if you want. But mostly just because of the title, I think, itself. But so we're talking about this year's 2024's Late Night with the Devil, which we saw the other night. It's directed by two directors. It says here. I guess maybe they're like I don't know. I only have IMDb open. I don't necessarily want to look at all the trivia, but it's Cameron Cairns and Colin Cairns, so maybe brothers or partners or but in any case, so two of them, and I always I can't say the guy's name, David
Desmalchian.
Desmalchian?
No.
But he's awesome, and he's like in everything. He's like the guy. He's like in Dune, and
that's I always forget he's in that.
Yeah, he's like in Dune. He's in this. He's like
in the Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah, he's in the Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Oh yeah, he's been busy.
He was
actually.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff. Oh well, he was in Batman. He's in The Dark Knight.
That's where I initially knew him from.
Yeah.
I think that was his big break, I would say. He's like a big blockbuster movie.
The greatest that actor of our generation.
So
because far. And I was listening to him on a podcast, and he seems super down to earth. Like,
yeah, he's a big kind of movie nerd, horror movies specifically.
He's into the supernatural.
Yeah, he loves all the weird shit.
I would love him to listen to this, and then we do an evening of dinner with him.
Oh my god.
Because that would be fun. But yeah, so let's talk about the movie real quick. The movie was awesome. I guess we could preface. We can go over the
premise.
The premise, but we should also preface that it likely we're going to probably mention
spoilers for sure.
Well, spoilers to the point of if maybe skip to the food part, I guess, if you want to watch the movie first.
Do like broad strokes, I guess.
We can try to do broad strokes, but spoilers. I mean, honestly, there's not like a ton of spoilery stuff, but I guess so. The premise is, and this is actually something I didn't think about, and something that I kind of wanted to mention to you is so this is considered a found footage movie. Yeah, it's very much regarded as a found footage movie.
Weird take.
So
okay.
Yeah, so the premise of the movie is this takes place in 1977. It is a made up television host similar to Johnny Carson of that era, or I guess who's the other guy? I forgot, the Ed Sullivan, guys like that. So this character, and I guess what's his name, Jack Delroy of I love the name of the show too, the Night Owls.
The Night Owls. That should be a real show, actually. It's a great name.
Yeah. So he is supposed to be, I guess, like a competitor on another network. Another network. UBC, I think is what it was. So not NBC, but UBC. So yeah, so this is a gentleman who has his show. He's trying to compete with like the likes of Johnny Carson. He can't necessarily beat him in the ratings, so he's kind of like the Conan O'Brien of the era.
Oof.
Well, in the sense of like, it seems like the way they set it up is like he has a big following, people like him, but like he does very gimmicky sort of stuff in order to draw an audience, which is, I guess, kind of the appeal, you know, where they show him with like magicians and whatever. And so like, I assume that, you know, that's kind of his thing. And it talks about the ups and downs of his career and how this is something that he's always wanted. And so it's a great setup. And then it talks about like a tragedy that happens in his life. And so he kind of spirals out of control in terms of like not really wanting to do this anymore or whatever. So I guess from the pressure of wanting to stay on the air and do stuff and also trying to get high ratings, because that's the only way he's going to stay on the air. This particular movie is based on a Halloween episode in which they are going to, well, the way that they set it up, I guess there's a narrator who narrates the intro, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second, because it's something I had already mentioned to you, but I wanted to expand on that, which is, so there is an intro. They explain that he's had a tragedy in his life. Things are spiraling. So this is an episode that was, I guess the way they made it sound, it was aired for television, but there was also footage that was not used, that I guess was like sort of behind the scenes stuff, which fills in the gaps when we're not seeing what's on the air at any given time. And it was, I guess it had the highest ratings ever because everybody tuned in, and it was because they were going to bring in a medium. And
so it was a medium, a psychic, and a former, I don't know what you would call him, not a maybe
like
an
a truth
illusionist
seeker.
Or whatever.
That's right. He was an illusionist.
He used to be an illusionist, or a psychic, but then he decided to kind of,
go
I guess,
against, like he wants to prove that it's all a farce.
Yeah, correct.
Like everything is
like
a farce.
he's trying to disprove everybody basically because he knows all the secrets. He's part of kind of a group of quote unquote like scientists that want to disprove psychic science, I guess is what they call them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And then I think in the intro, and this might be a little spoilery, and so warning here going forward, in the intro they explained that Jack Delroy, along with his tragedies happen in his life, he did have supposedly a sketchy past being part of a society of like stonecutters or something, the way they made it look. Masons. Or I guess as stonemasons, or as of more recent of reservation dogs, catfish fuckers. But so they hint at that as being like, oh, he's been tied to this like as a Hollywood thing, you know. But they don't really expand on that, but it's part of the intro.
Yeah, the whole deal is like, oh, there's rumors that he's part of a secret society, and it's all like influential, powerful men that meet in like the redwood forests.
Yeah, it felt very Knights of Templar sort of.
Yeah, sort of like secret handshakes, and weird parties.
Yeah, and
initiation rites, things like that.
So, and I like that. So. That's kind of the setup, and then the movie plays itself out. But I think, speaking about like the movie itself, what I liked initially, or what I liked really about the whole thing, just as a whole piece, is like I was mentioning to you on our drive home, like having grown up during the Satanic Panic of the 80s, and that being like a real thing, and D&D books being banned, and I remember so many books being pulled from Walden Books like back home because they just didn't want
Walden
kids.
Books, R.I.P.
Yeah, they just didn't want. Just didn't want us the fragile mind of a child to be exposed to that kind of stuff, and so there was a certain like aesthetic to a lot of the movie, and I like that. And the movie starts, like I mentioned, with the narrator sort of giving this explanation, and it has like this 16 millimeter sort of look to the movie, and it's great because it very much reminds me of Faces of Death, which Faces of Death is like the 80s, the boogeyman of the 80s. It was the VHS that was like, oh, it's banned in 130 countries.
Totally real.
It's all real. And like every time I'd go over to a friend's house for slumber parties or whatever, that was like the thing we watched at midnight. Because, well, it was either that or Satan. And so we could easily get a hold of Faces of Death. Yeah, it's super messed up. But the intro with the narration and the 16 millimeter, like the whole grimy sort of feel about it feels very, it feels very authentic, I guess.
It makes it easy to buy into the story. Basically, you get really immersed in it, I feel like.
Yeah. They really set it up really well with that. And then they sort of do.
They even did the aspect ratio, right?
Yeah, it's a 4:3 aspect ratio.
Initially, anyway.
Yeah, well, that narration part at the beginning, but that sets up the really nice. Everything's got a certain. Well, it's funny because just because it's 1977 doesn't necessarily mean they just put a film grain on it and made it look like, oh, it's just on film and it's grainy. Like, there's a lot about the aesthetic of almost like washed film, like it's faded film.
All the colors that they use, just the design of it's. I don't know. It's almost like they knew how to make it look like it doesn't look like the most comfortable set to be on,
right?
Because that's not how it was back in the 70s. They just like had the little office looking chairs. Yeah, like there wasn't even a sofa.
Yeah, there's no table.
There's no, like, a couple people had drinks, but not all of it. Like, it wasn't.
There was a little table. Yeah.
It wasn't super like welcoming looking, but because they just like slapped together a set. Like, it wasn't really like.
But that's how they did it back then.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a cottage industry at like how it kind of is now.
Exactly, like it's not the Jimmy Fallon now of very.
Right,
it feels
like
very.
Everything's produced. Everything.
It feels like a universal, like a universal ride. Yeah, but I like that because you're right in that, like, the chairs were all like just single chairs and they're just on little rollers. It looks so
uncomfortable.
But the backgrounds and all the, like, the set and the shag carpet and everything, like, all that was really cool.
It was
like
rad.
I wanted all that stuff. Like, I wanted that set like in the house somehow, in our tiny ass house. But it was fun. I just love that. I love the colors, the outfits, the wardrobe. I mean,
the wardrobe
was like the dude,
really good.
the illusionist or whatever with the big giant butterfly,
the lapels, the collar,
butterfly collar.
That velvet jacket, like suit jacket that he has on later on.
It's all that was so well done. So I think just from a purely how it was shot. Well, it's funny because how it was shot. I mean, they're basically watching what the camera, I guess, would be putting on television. But then they had other shots like further back. So you're watching. It's funny because they have it set up they kind of tell you're watching the footage of that was aired that evening, even though you're not watching it through totally the eyes of like the television set. There are other views, and those other views, I guess, are supposed to be like. Between commercials or whenever they go to commercials, they would go to black and white, and it looked like it was like being filmed by somebody holding a handheld 16 millimeter.
Was that a thing back then?
Yeah,
like you can. Oh, okay.
Absolutely. But the funny thing is like, so this is like where you have to kind of throw logic out of the window because you would have like filmed it, but then at the same time.
That's the devil.
Yeah, the devils.
The devils come to our house.
The devils are fighting outside, and we're not going to rescue them. Oh
my god!
My goodness,
it's so embarrassing.
It is, but it is what it is. I'll cut that part out. But anyway, so I guess again, if you were going to throw out like the logic of it all, if you were walking around with a 16 millimeter camera, then that means you would have to develop that film and intercut it with the video footage that they had or whatever. But whatever, that doesn't matter because I was telling you after the movie was over, I was super engaged in that movie. Like we always like the movies that we like. And obviously we tend to lean to certain genres, but I think the ones that we always talk about, the ones that we like are when the world building is just such that it's really well done. And you just kind of believe that this guy had a show called Night Owls and, that all these people are real and that this was actually done and the effort was put in to splice this thing together or whatever. I completely bought into the world building in this. And like you were saying, the sets are really well thought out and they're very meticulous about how they made those. And so from that aspect, I really loved everything about that, which just had me completely sold into the movie. I guess the story itself I wouldn't say it's anything particularly special.
No, I wouldn't say. I mean, we've seen similar movies. Like, wasn't there one movie in Shudder that we actually liked that was a similar concept?
Well, it was like more modern, but
yeah,
it was the one
modern, but it was the same idea. Like somebody,
like a YouTuber that was like a priest or something that
he like somebody ends up being possessed.
Well, he was trying to,
or was it like an exorcism?
He was doing an exorcism.
That's what it was.
And then it turned legit, and then the demon.
That's right. They were like, it was fake at first, wasn't it?
Well, the whole thing was fake.
Yeah,
it was. It was like a YouTube influencer exorcist or an exorcist.
Yeah.
And then
that's a good one too.
It was fun. I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I want to look it up.
Similar premise, and it's but I guess the difference being it's modern, and the difference being the demon actually calls the guy out and says like, oh well,
you wanted one.
Yeah, you wanted it, here it is. And in this sense though, it's what I liked about this, there's nothing original about it from the standpoint of like this is what especially I would say young girls do at sleepovers. It's like, let's bring out the Ouija board and let's push it to the limits.
Like
summon the
spirits.
Yeah, that's effectively what this movie is. Because they are trying to do an on-air summoning of.
Well, it's almost like for him, it almost like doesn't. I mean, I don't know, spoiler, I guess, but like it almost doesn't matter to him, right? Whether it's real or not, he just wants the ratings.
Right, he just needs high ratings.
Like you don't get a sense of like whether he believes in this or not, and that if he even cares.
Yeah,
he just wants to beat Johnny Carson.
Yeah, he just needs to beat him in the ratings so that A, he beats him in the ratings, and two, like his show will stay on the air because he can finally prove to the networks that he's worth staying on. And so yeah, the movie starts with him bringing on the medium, medium, and they kind of go through a bit, and it was kind of fun because like as an audience, you don't really know because I thought the whole thing was staged, and I thought they were going to be like behind the scenes, they're going to be in cahoots of being like, hey, nice job with the flickering of the lights and tying it all and doing this and that. But they don't really get into that. So you don't really know for sure if it's
real or not.
Yeah. And so I really like that because it just kind of sets things up that way. And then they bring out the illusionist who,
the former
illusionist, who's
now a debunker, basically.
Yeah,
truther.
But yeah, so his whole thing is like, I'll give you a check for like $10,000 if you can prove me wrong.
No, if he can't disprove them.
Yeah. So he wants to be proven that this is real, but in reality, he doesn't really care. Like he believes it's all all of it
phony.
All of it's phony.
Yeah.
And then the last guest that they bring on is the
doctor.
The doctor who is I guess
she's taking care of this young girl that they found. What was it? She was in a cult?
Yeah, she was like in some sort of weird occult.
Was it a satanic cult?
Yes.
It was, right? Yeah. So it was a satanic cult. They raided them and they captured. Everybody killed themselves, I think.
Yeah,
or something.
Something like that.
But she was a survivor, so she gets rescued by this doctor lady who also happens to be like, she's a doctor technically, I guess.
She's a PhD.
Yeah, but no, it's more like it's in like parapsychology or
Right.
something like that. It's not actual,
Right.
but hard science.
But I guess part of what I was buying there is like, but she's also like a therapist.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean, that's how she's acting.
Right.
Yeah,
like, cause she's taking
care of her,
well, not only is she taking care, but she's actually taken like, what do you call it? Like she is the guardian of this,
that's right.
child.
Yeah.
So she has like actual guardian, like
guardianship.
Yeah. Guardianship of this young girl. And, but apparently through deep therapy, she feels like she's helping her, but they also feel like, I guess because it was a satanic cult, that there may be something deeper.
Yeah. It kind of crosses the line a little bit because she wants to help the girl, but because she's a parapsychologist,
right,
she does believe that there's some kind of entity in the girl.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't know. It's really interesting setup because it's like, she means well, but you're not really sure what she's doing to help the girl.
Right. Exactly. Like she's developed tools for her to help her cope.
Yeah.
The same way you would with somebody who's dealing with like other forms of trauma.
Sure.
But this isn't trauma. Like
it's like literally a demon.
Yeah, it's straight up. Yeah. And so that buildup is kind of there, and it sort of plays itself out, right? If you really think about how this is all going to kind of go down, without giving away too much of the movie and too many spoilers. But and I think you and I have talked about this, especially in more recent times. The movie was like a tight hour and a half, which is
loved.
Yeah,
not nearly enough movies these days can pull that off.
Yeah, and it was great because we were able to get home before 10.
Because we're old now.
Yeah, we could eat dinner at Luby's. We could get the early bird, the Luann special. We can go to a movie and we can come back
home in time for 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and watch
Johnny Carson.
But yeah, so I love that it was tight, hour and a half. I love that because the story building and the world itself and everything was just really well put together, that like I didn't need tons of exposition and I don't need to know. There was just enough there for me to buy into all of it. Like I said, I could have gone into like, oh, well, who's actually filming all this and splicing it all together and taking the live video coverage with whatever, like all that. It doesn't matter.
It does. It's funny because it does occur to you right after a while. That's like, oh, that's not a thing that they actually, that would actually be logistically whatever.
You could do that now. Today.
But it was so easy to like buy into, like, and it moved so fast at a pace that like, you know what, even if it doesn't make sense, I don't care because this is such a fun ride that it doesn't. Those little quibbles don't really matter. Yeah.
And so I give it like aces because of that, because I had so much fun with it. And it's funny too. I think, like I think I mentioned, or like I mentioned already, having grown up in the Satanic Panic, being part of Gen X and knowing that this is something that I was very excited to see this movie, because I remember telling you that when I was younger, especially again, probably during sweeps, the same premise as this, because this takes place during sweeps period, so they have to get really good ratings. I remember back home, I felt like as a way to scare more people into that the Satanic Panic is real, there used to be like the late night, or not even late night, like the 10 o'clock news or 9 o'clock news about like, oh, there's satanic rituals happening in Mexico, and there's exorcisms happening, and they would show
kids might get kidnapped.
Yeah, and they're showing like all these like these young people like thrashing and screaming and whatever. And it's like, for all we know, they probably were like actually probably had like a legit, like were epileptic or something that was like, and the church is like, oh, it's Satan, but it's like, well, maybe you should have them see a real doctor.
Yeah, but I think that kid's just sick.
Yeah, I think that kid just needs real help. But I remember them doing that and being like, oh, like, listen to this videotape recording and the voices.
You remember all the ones about the Beatles, the backmasking?
Yeah. And all it does is just fuck up your needle. But yeah, so that was like a real thing, I remember. And so I was super excited about this movie because I wanted to, like, I felt this movie was targeted at people like me, because we grew up with some of these things and we knew these things. And when the movie was over, it was funny because there was a couple to the right of us, and there was a couple to the left of us, and the couple on the right, like she was sitting right next to me. Like as soon as the movie's over, she like kind of leaned over to us, and she's like, "What did you guys think? Did you like the movie?" And she said, "I've never heard of anything like this, and I've never seen anything like this."
Which is so fascinating because she was so young.
Yeah.
She was maybe in her 20s with her boyfriend.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is, it's really interesting. And maybe because I'm just so like submerged in so much reading and listening and watching about all of these weird shit that like I think everything that they did in the movie had some kernel of something that actually happened in real life, right? So her saying like, "Oh, this is wild. I've never even heard of.
Right.
What was satanic panic? What was it? Was this like the medium that actually wanted to disprove everybody?"
They would never show this on live air, like
right. Were all of the, I mean, except for the actual demon possession.
Right.
A lot of that stuff actually did happen. Like there's an actual, I just looked it up. It's there was a magician back in the 60s. His name was James Randi, and he did offer like money to anybody that can without a doubt that can show magic, that he can, like there's no way he could disprove it.
Yep.
And just kept upping the ante. Like every, I don't know, a couple years or so, he'd increase the price. It started at like $1,000.
Yep.
And then he just keep increasing it. I think it got all the way to $1 million.
Yep.
And obviously, like, you know, he like quote unquote disproved everybody.
It's funny because it makes me think it's even more part of the bit. Like,
right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like everything to me, I mean, for the girl that talked to us, like for her, it was a fun ride because it's like, oh, this is crazy. But for me, it was fun because of the exact opposite, because like, oh, I can recognize a lot of these signs.
Right.
Because like some of this actually happened in real, like even like the whole like Delroy versus Johnny Carson thing. That was like Jay Leno versus Conan, you know, like just all of it sounded familiar. So it was a lot of fun in that sense.
So yeah, it's funny because having talked through this, I now have a movie that I think we should watch and we'll talk about later, and I think that'll be fun. It sort of ties into this, but so yeah, if you are wondering whether you would like this movie, well, I guess if you know us and you know our likes, then you know you'd like this movie. But I would say like go in wanting to have fun. Like it is. Yeah. It's not. I would say it's even not. It's not super scary, but it's
not.
And but you can build it up for yourself if you just don't look too much into what this movie is going to be about. Just have fun with it.
Yeah, I feel like this movie is more about the ride than anything else.
Yes.
It's just kind of, you know, just kind of let yourself be entertained by what's happening. You know, don't take it too seriously.
Yes. Don't expect high CG when I mean it's obvious that at some point they're going to have to use some. I mean, just based on the title alone, right? But don't think that you're going to get. I mean,
it's
if
not
anything,
it's not the next Exorcist or anything. You know, it's not it's not close. That. But that's not to say it's not good either.
But I think the difference being right is The Exorcist is like, you got to put in a lot of effort to watch that because it takes a lot to be able to watch that movie. And it's almost like more emotional, draining. Whereas this movie it's got a good, it's filling, like it's filling just enough. And it's not too much and it's not too much of one thing. It's very like, I mean, it has a very indie feel to it, which I really appreciate too, because it is kind of like a fresh idea, and it's nice to have movies like this instead of just the kind of the same sort of like
churn and burn in Hollywood.
Yeah, like I would love to see more of these, and it's great that they also like send it to theaters, even though it will be streaming like at some point.
Yeah, it was so fun watching it in a crowd.
Well, that was the other thing too. It was very surprising that theater for a Sunday night.
Yeah, it was a decent turnout.
I was actually I had to get us seats a little bit closer than I was
I love
kind
that.
of wanting to be, but
And I love seeing kind of the younger people in there.
yeah,
You know,
and they were not being annoying. They were like engaged, and I love that. Like it felt very reminiscent to when you and I go to Texas Frightmare and we get to watch, or when we would watch movies and screenings where like people are engaged and
like
you're giving it a chance,
right? You know what you're going in for, and
Right.
you're not trying to be a film critic. You're just going in there for a good time,
for fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would very much recommend that. And then speaking of it being just the right amount of like filling, now
we're gonna segue that way.
we're gonna segue into the second part, and I guess like so we're both movie nerds, but you are a chef with a background in fine cuisine. So we're going to not necessarily challenge you, but to bring the the dinner and a movie together. We're gonna pair this with something that either we would make or we would go and buy, right? And I'm gonna and just to kind of, I guess, sprinkle ideas in your mind. I'm just gonna. I may not always throw in the food portion because I love eating the food that you make, and I don't necessarily. I can make barbecue on a grill.
It's good barbecue,
and I can make Spanish rice, and that's about it.
I mean, it's all good, so.
Right? Well, I can make hamburger helper too.
The highest praise I ever got for my cooking was when I made it took hours. It took hours to make this bolognese. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And then he tasted it and he was like, "Oh, it's so good. It's just like hamburger helper."
Yeah, it is the highest compliment you can get from me.
As like sweet.
So I was thinking about the title and I was thinking about the aesthetic, and it got me reminding of when I was like a young singleton in my 20s living in like in the lower part or close to
the bachelor pad.
Well, no. Well, yes, but no. Like I was living in the not so great apartment down in Dallas, but
the ghetto,
not the super ghetto.
Not the super ghetto.
This is the one that
the
was
medium ghetto.
Yeah, this is the in the middle ghetto. But yeah, I was living by myself with the cats, and I loved watching. I would watch a lot of movies by myself. A lot of times, that's when the Sci-Fi Channel was still SCI. FI and not
before they made the stupid change.
So they used to show like lots of really good stuff late at night. And I remember one time I think I came home after work and I think they were playing like some of the Return of the Living Dead or something. I don't remember what it was, but or maybe it was like Dance of the Dead or something like that. I don't know, but I remember coming home and being like, "Oh, I want to watch this trash because it looks like fun." And it was fun. They were actually pretty good. Even though they're edited for television, so there's no like boobies and no language or no bad language. But there was a place around the corner that I would go to. It was like a Chinese place, and they were like a late. I think they were open till like 3 or 4.
Oh, for like the students, probably.
Yeah, because it was down near SMU, so this is kind of Lower Greenville kind of area of Dallas, and they had like a sort of like a sesame chicken that was like sort of chicken nuggies, but like kind of crispy. Like they were like,
okay,
the way they would make them would give like the like, it was either they did it really bad or it was just that I liked it that way, but it seemed like they would kind of cook it just a little bit too long. So like, I guess like the glaze or whatever would kind of turn a little bit of crispy, and then the chicken would end up, I guess you would probably say it was like very overcooked chicken, but I kind of like that because it kind of gave it a sort of crispiness. And then their fried rice was, al dente. Yeah. And their rice was, or the fried rice was really good. So like, I would imagine watching this movie with like one of those, like the classic Chinese white box
little
takeouts.
Boxes? Okay.
With that, and then my chopsticks, and I'm sitting down and I'm watching Late Night with the Devil, and I'm kind of turning down the lights or turn off all the lights and just have the glow from my, back then I would have still had a CRT like TV or a probably like, yeah, I probably still had like a CRT because this is like
after a long day at school or a long day at work.
This would have been probably early. I was in my early 20s, so if this movie had been out, that's exactly what I would have gotten. It's like that, like the takeout box with the overly crispy cooked sesame chicken,
just like greasy fried rice,
greasy fried rice.
Yum.
In a box, like ready to watch some devil shit. Like I'm like the devil. I'm here to do devil shit and eat my crispy chicken.
Sounds perfect.
So what would you, if you had to pair anything to go with
Okay,
this?
so that's funny that you went personal on your selection because I almost went wider with mine. So because it was such a New York movie, you know, it was late night and it was so 70s, so it was very male dominated and
musky, like
exactly,
very brute.
So the first thing I thought of, and it's funny because I have two answers actually.
Okay.
So my runner-up answer was gonna be the very like traditional Americana household of like mom makes the dinner and then we'll eat the dinner and we're watching TV as a family. It's like the like the old school like vision of what America ideally
like in Back to the
be.
Future.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That one scene where they're like
yes,
they roll up the TV in the little cart.
Yes, exactly that. So it's like that first idea that I had, it was like meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. So that
like a
was
brown gravy though, right?
Oh yeah, obviously.
Brown gravy, like
brown gravy. I know some people are partial to the ketchup situation.
Yeah, but no,
I'm more into
gravy,
I don't know.
right?
Yeah, I don't know. I do the gravy.
So it's not. I don't know if that's a Southern thing or whatever, but
I don't know.
But
I
yeah,
mean,
no.
I like it with ketchup sometimes, but
it's
anyway, regardless, it's like meatloaf, mashed
potatoes.
probably green beans, but probably out of a can. You know, very like old timey kind of like some of it is out of convenience because cans are just like a brand new thing.
But the servingware would be like what we have. What's it? What is it called?
The Corelle plates.
So it's got that brownish color.
It's like
for the meatloaf,
the very lightweight kind of.
Yeah, it's got the white etching for the mashed potatoes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So
like that.
that's the initial thought because it made that kind of style of cooking feels very like 60s, 70s where it's still a very nuclear kind of familial unit that like we could still survive on a single income wage earner. And you only needed one car and the kids would run to school and you don't have to worry about whatever. And it's
leave your doors unlocked.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the white picket fence and the 2.5 children and a dog.
Because us minorities hadn't made it into the suburbs yet.
We're still
us Mexicans and Filipinos hadn't really come in yet and messed things up.
Yeah, no, we weren't. I don't even think we could intermarry.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, anyway, just kind of the ideal, like almost like kind of, what is it called? Norman Rockwell kind of like what the ideal white suburban American family.
That would be such a great, think of that painting of, like you were saying, like a family sitting down, like serving the mashed potatoes and the TV's rolled up, but you can't see what's on that TV.
Yeah.
And it's like late night with the devil. It's like glowing onto that TV.
Yeah.
Like,
so that's what I thought of just on the opposite side of the television of like who's watching.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I thought of was like back to being in New York.
Okay.
Being in that world of like late night and celebrity and blah blah blah. And the first thing I thought of in that sense was like the old fashioned like late 1800s like New York steakhouse. Like just slabs of beef, wedge salad, baked potato, like heavy, and like chase it down with like a whiskey or something. A cigar,
a whiskey and a cigar,
like, and it's all like men's clubs, like women probably even are allowed in some of them,
and the illusionist in the movie has like a whiskey the entire time and a cigar. It's
the same idea of
the
like
illusionist guy would be at
totally
this.
That would be where he would go like right before he ran up to the show, like. So that was the idea I had, like the two different meals, like still very, because I've only been to New York once with you, and our experience in New York was totally different because we were, normal, non-rich, non-celebrity people.
Yeah.
So we ate like street food, and we ate pizza and like hot dogs or whatever, halal cart.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Well, it's funny you say that because I've been to New York a couple times for work, and I'm glad and also but would like for you, but also not for you to like see Queens, because the area that I was in, which Queens, which is like a really rough area, it felt like something out of like the Dark Knight comic book by Frank Miller. Like it looked very scary and dungy. Like it looked frightening.
Okay.
But at the same time, the way I described that Chinese food with like kind of the orangey tint light with almost like a flicker glow
Yeah.
and the neon sign that's like on and it's like open till 4 a.m. or whatever.
Yep.
That aesthetic I feel like would be what I would pick up, like a dungy, dirty part of Queens that smells like garbage because their garbage gets picked up at night and that's when all the rats come out. But like that for what I was saying. So you're saying for the like, but I guess the way that I would tie that in is like that's where I would pick up my food and then I would go home to watch this movie.
Right.
So you're saying for the first option, the family as a whole would be watching this, like they would have that meal and then watch the movie, or just send the kids to bed.
It's kind of funny because I wasn't going in the direction of they sat down and watched a movie together.
Oh, you're just tying it to the.
It's more like when the kids go to bed, mom and dad have Johnny Carson on TV.
Oh, I got you.
But instead of Johnny Carson,
it's this.
Yeah, it's this, and it happened to be Halloween. They finished unpacking the candy and whatever,
and they kind of let them watch a little bit of the start of it
because it's so scary and it's
but
so
then
like
you're going to bed when
because
they're
it's
bringing
too
out
much and it's too late and there's school tomorrow.
Oh, I like that. And
so that was my first angle into that.
Yeah.
And then the other angle was like, what would it be like in New York in the 70s?
That's where the guests
if you're at the top of the game and you know you're celebrity and you're what is it called, rubbing elbows with like those kinds of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, immediately my first thought was like steakhouse.
Well, and like I said, that's where the Illusionists went, or that's where they're like a little after show, right?
Yeah.
They're like, hey, let's go to I don't know, something like it'd be called like barrels or something, right? Where it's like something dumb where it's like there's just barrels everywhere and the walls are made of wood and it's very like
mahogany and
and everybody smokes inside
leather and just kind of these ridiculous kind of men rule the world kind of clubs.
And the guy at the door is like, oh, good evening. He's like, hey, Frank, how's it going?
Right. Here's like a 20.
Yeah.
Like, how's the wife?
And he's like, Mr. Delroy.
Please.
He's like, please come in. We have your table.
Right. Correct. Yeah. So that was my kind of two ideas of going. I kind of like that you went more personal though. It was the first
thought, and it's purely because of the title and also because of looking at the poster and the cover. But I thought that really like called out to me. So
I think my approach was more that way because I don't have that connection with like late night in particular. Like I didn't. Like back in the Philippines where I grew up, we moved here when I was a teenager, but like we didn't have like late night television. It wasn't until we moved here that like, I started watching Conan, whatever. But like I had no conception of like who Johnny Carson was other than like, you hear in pop culture or whatever.
Right. Whereas I watched him retire. Like I remember,
I know that was a big deal, right?
Like,
yeah.
My parents were crying when he retired because it was like the end of an era.
Sure.
It was like a whole thing.
Yeah, so. I had no like conception of how it got started and or all of that like pop culture moment. I missed all of that, so I have no connection to that.
Yeah.
But I do have like, and it's funny because being removed from that, kind of being from the outside, thinking about like what ideal America would have been. Like you think of like the normal Rockwell paintings and all of that, which obviously. It was all like surface stuff. Like none of it was really real for a lot of people. But that's what it made me think of, like mom with the apron and she's ready with the martini for dad when he comes home and she has dinner in the oven, like all of that bullshit.
No, I like that. It paints like a really good picture, I think, for this movie. Because you're right. I think what I described is more like you kind of have to know me, but maybe, maybe that's also something that you may want to do if you're also an introvert, right? Which is get your favorite late night takeout and then just watch like a scary movie,
comforting,
Yeah, and then you're just going to go along for the ride until like 2 or 3 in the morning. Even though, I mean, we're usually tired by like 10.
Well, that's these days.
Yeah. Well,
that's why we recommend hour and a half movies.
Yes, hour and a half movies. More of those, please. So yeah, that was fun. I think that was a good pairing. I have a movie in mind. I'm hungry now, but I'm glad we had leftovers for dinner and didn't have like a big giant full meal. But so that is the menu for this evening. I think we both give Late Night with the Devil our
Thumbs up? Are we doing thumbs up or
Well, I don't know what's on a menu.
4 stars?
It's it's a chef's pick, or it's a chef's.
Oh, like a chef special.
Yeah, we're gonna give it the chef special. It'll be under the chef special on the menu. We're gonna give this one that remarks.
Plot du jour.
Yeah, this is more than an appetizer, more than just a lunch special. This is I think I would agree. This is definitely a chef's a chef's special of ours on the menu. So, well, I guess that's it. Let's go. Let's go get some late night Chinese or
fat juicy
I don't know
steak.
if I want to get a juicy steak at this hour, but let's find a little something to snack on, and I guess we'll talk about another menu item next time.
All right, sounds good.
All right, love you.
Love you too.
All right.